Thank you, David. I'd now like to welcome to the stage Werner Pamminger from Business Upper Austria. Thank you, Werner.
Okay, well, I promise to be brief. 25 years of clusters in Upper Austria. We didn't have a policy in those 25 years. Actually, we are not planning to implement one either, so that's actually the end of my presentation. And I wish you all a very nice further conference. And in order to enjoy this conference a little bit more, I brought a little video about Upper Austria and the region I'm from, so you can enjoy the free time a little bit more. Is it? If it's working, if it's not working, that's fine. Not oh, well. I've been traveling a lot in Austria, but I've never seen this before. So, but never mind, we proceed here. No video, that's fine. Upper Austria, more or less, is the northern region bordering to Bavaria and to the Czech Republic. And it's more or less the main industrial region of Austria. It is actually not the large region, 1.5 million, but it's very much focused on manufacturing. 32% of our GDP is still derived from manufacturing and from industry, which is quite comparable also to what we see in different regions. And actually, that's the source of our prosperity, and we have a clear vision and a clear strategy to maintain this source. But it's definitely not easy, and because, and I will come back to those figures later, Upper Austria counts for about 17% of the Austrian population, but it uses 35% of the total energy consumption, which means it's not because we drive more cars or we heat our houses more than other people, but it's because of the industry. And this, of course, is giving us big challenges nowadays. I think the Ukraine-Russian war was already mentioned. We were those guys living on cheap Russian pipeline gas for the last 40 years. Not so bad, but challenges are there quite a bit. The history of our clusters in Upper Austria, it's quite comparable to what we've learned from the Basque country or what we heard from the Catalan region. Our region was in crisis, end of the 80s, mid of the 90s. Big state-owned industry was privatized, not efficient anymore, a lot of layoffs and a lot of changes were going on. Our regional politicians, like the ones in the Basque country or in other regions, kind of discovered the ideas of Michael Porta and his ideas of focusing on clusters and on regional strength, and that was the same what happened in Upper Austria also end of the 90s with the focus on those existing branches where we were already strong. And over time, in the 25 years, we had a lot of changes in our structures, in our cluster things. We merged, we disembarked certain things. But one thing we did never change was more or less our core strategy. And this slide is more or less 25 years old. It means more or less we focus on innovation, full stop. That's actually what the aim of our clusters and our cluster structures is. Nothing else. We are not there for foreign direct investment. We are not there for incubation. We are not there for education. It's just the focus on innovation through the means of collaboration. Because in our region, we now have 8 clusters with about 2,000 participating companies. 85% of those companies are small and medium-sized. And we know and we see that innovation needs collaboration in those days, especially with small and medium-sized companies, to come forward with new ideas, with new products and services there is. And this kind of innovation approach in our case was always very much focused like on those smaller kind of projects in order to come forward with this incremental kind of innovation activities. And in the last 25 years, now we have more than 3,000 companies involved, almost in 900 collaborative projects. So there is a big chunk of companies in our region that has actually a positive experience with collaborating with other companies over time. And when I talk about collaboration, I mean collaboration along the value chain. We are not talking about sectors. We are not talking about a horizontal group of companies. We're always talking about the whole value chains. And this is the example of our plastics cluster. I was in charge of the plastics cluster myself for like 15 years. And I remember in 2012, I was here invited in Belfast with the plastics industry in this region. And they came with a delegation in 2011 to Upper Austria. We brought a delegation here in 2012. And we established business contacts and collaboration activities in those days. Nowadays, and time moved on, the cluster department and the clusters are now an integral part of our regional development agency called Business Upper Austria. It's 1 out of 5 operational activities. It's actually the biggest one. It's the strongest one, and it accounts for about 65% of headcount and budget in this organization. And in total, we serve around about 3,000 companies per year. We employ around about 150 employees. And what's also a little bit special about this agency, I'm not from the government, and I'm not Ronald Reagan, but I run this agency, which is also co-owned by our social partner structures. So the Chamber of Commerce, the Chamber of Labor, and the Federation of the Industry are also co-owning this organization, which means I have to drink a few coffees more to keep those guys informed and to keep them on board, because in Austria, it's that the Chamber of Labor and the Chamber of Commerce, they kind of do the trade negotiations. And that's, of course, there are definitely different elements of interest there on a day-to-day basis, but they do agree on this strong focus on innovation within our organization. And that's why we are also, and this is also maybe a little bit unique about our structure, we are also co-owning a big chunk of research centers, 10 research centers with a staff of more than 1,100 research staff. Applied research together with universities and companies are also managed and run by us, as well as business incubator programs and other technology centers. So the whole let's say, ecosystem of innovation is more or less concentrated in our organization, with a stronghold in the cluster and the cluster department, which are more or less the ones who are initiating this kind of collaborative projects. So to make a long story short, a few lessons about what we learned and what my experience of dealing with clusters for 25 years is now, that we are always talking about innovation. And this buzzword of innovation is at least sometimes mixed up with R&D. And for my understanding, innovation is the opposite of R&D. Because if you have R&D and an R&D system, let's call it a university institute, you put in money, and some institutes, they cost a little bit of money, and the output is know-how and knowledge. An innovation system, in our understanding, and we call it a company, you put in know-how into this innovation system, and you get out money in terms of revenues, of turnovers, of profits whatsoever. And in an ideal world, those two things work together a little bit, but it's always for us very important to explain, especially politicians, that innovation is not research and development, and it's not just putting money into government-run institutions, but on the company side. The question, and it was always, I think, David started the discussion, bottom-up or top-down, what is the financing? In our case, it's also a private-public financing. At the beginning, it was more or less the government who was propelling the engine with coal at the start. At the beginning, it was like a investment by the government. 85% of the funding was paid by the government at the beginning, with a strong decrease over time. And now it's just comparable to the Basque Country. About 70% of the funding of our cluster structures comes from companies, and about 30% by the public side. Despite having any kind of cluster policy, this is like on a year-to-year basis, the government is putting the oil into the engine that is still running it. No matter which government structure is there, I think no one is really actually challenging the idea of getting rid of this kind of funding, which is there now for 25 years in our structure. The core issue, and I'm coming back, what I think all of our my pre-speakers did say, at the end it comes down to trust and trust building among companies, among institutions, and between government and the companies. And this is, of course, not so easy to build trust, because you cannot sign a document, now we trust each other. You can do that, but it's not worth the paper written, because trust needs to build up, and it takes usually a long time. Trust needs touch. We were talking about that in the bus this morning, that you need to get people together in order to develop trust. You cannot do it on Zoom or on Teams. I mean, we tried to do this also in the COVID times, but it has a reason that Linda was putting all you together in this room and get you together, not just on screens, sitting in your pajamas back home and looking at a screen, doing something else. So it needs touch to develop trust. It needs time. Also, in our case, we realized that a lot of those projects, the ideas were there at the beginning, but it took like 10 years to develop the trust that you are ready for this kind of collaboration. And it's tough. It takes a long time to develop trust, but then you screw up once and all the trust is being kind of wiped away. And that's especially we are so close to Ukraine and to Russia. And I've been this generation who were trying. I've been many times to Russia, seeing how we tried to build up trust and one stupid thing and everything is gone again. And that's more or less the same when you work together with companies and with institutions, that you can screw it up really, really easily. So for us, after 25 years, what's more or less next for us, and how I see the future for our cluster structures and what's more or less their task. And here we go again. It's those 35% energy consumption of Austria, which is actually giving us a big challenge ahead. This is a picture of Linz, of the place where we are based. It's one of the few cities in Western Europe still left that has a steel mill in the center of town. Duisburg, I think, is one, and Linz is probably the other one. This steel mill alone counts for about 12% of total CO2 emissions of Austria, not Upper Austria, but Austria in total. So we are having big challenges for this kind of transformation, because for us it's clear, we don't want to get rid of this steel mill. It's the second most efficient steel mill in the world. There's one Swedish one who is emitting less CO2 per ton produced steel than voestalpine here in Linz. So we're contributing a lot to this, but these transformational challenges are there quite heavily, and we are convinced that this transformation can be just again be done through innovation, and mainly through innovation in cluster and cluster structures. That's why we already started some 12 years ago with a project where the vision is about decarbonizing our industry and our structures, and that we can demonstrate that the decarbonized industrial processes are actually feasible, and over time we can do it. And that's actually what our clusters are doing in those days. They're focusing a lot from those small kind of innovation projects more and more to the bigger ones, to those showcases, to the ones where we can really reduce carbon emissions in industrial processes. And we are also drawing, of course, a lot on government funds, on European funds to make this kind of transition happen. And one thing we were just successful 3 weeks ago is we were granted this hydrogen industrial valley by the European Commission. I mean, I mentioned Upper Austria is landlocked, so it's not like Norway. It's difficult for us to get access to hydrogen because we all know that we will not produce the energy needed for our region within Upper Austria. I think nowadays it's more than 60% of our overall energy is import related. Maybe we can reduce this to 55%, but that's probably it. So we need big transformative projects, and we more or less made those kind of projects where we get connection to Germany, to the southern German border, and to Slovenia and Italy to have access to international sources of hydrogen for the future. And this is more or less something where the clusters and the experience of that is kind of what we do. So this innovation for the sake of transformation is more or less the mission for the next, probably not few years, but many years to come, because this will be quite a challenge actually to do. Why do we think we can succeed? Well, we think we can succeed because we have a lot of experience in collaboration for the last 25 years. We have a lot of companies that have actually positive experiences in working together with other ones for doing new things, for developing new products, new services, come up with innovation to reduce carbon emissions whatsoever. So we actually claim that collaboration is an Upper Austrian core competence, and that's more or less almost my finishing here. But since the winter season is getting about to start, it's actually the real core competence that is needed ahead. It's skiing. So I want to invite you all to our mountains. Come back again and bring your skis. It will be a fantastic skiing season this year. So happy to also get you back to Austria and to Upper Austria. Thank you very much.